Art, I don't want to alarm you, but
There's almost 12 hours of Treehouse of Horror footage to cover. I've been around long enough to know that a majority of the people watching this video right now don't need to be told for the umpteenth time that The Simpsons is one of the most important, iconic, and dare I say, exceptionally cromulent shows of all time. Nowadays, the show is synonymous with seasonal rot and the ever-classic The Simpsons Will Never Die memes that you see going around the internet at least once a month. And with Disney's relatively recent acquisition of Fox, I think it's safe to say that both the show and the memes aren't going anywhere for a very long time. Thanks a lot, Merkle Mouse.
How long has that boy been treating you like that?
About 24 years.
That being said, at the height of their popularity, and even a bit later, The Simpsons were everywhere.
Eat my shorts.
okay.
They got their own movie, a popular dance, and were even associated with a whole lot of merch, whether it was Simpsons brand or not. And of course, everyone knows that you can't earn the status of legendary unless you make an appearance at the Ice Capades.
Are you little? Please, it is Ice Capade's policy not to allow strangling in the arena itself.
However, out of everything that The Simpsons has been attached to, I think that none are quite as influential as Treehouse of Horror. Starting in Season 2 and continuing up to the current year, every October, and sometimes November because sports,
Sports.
the family Simpson would put on a menagerie of non-canonical spooky stories, 3 per year to be precise. In the early years, the episodes always started with a warning of sorts, typically from Marge, and wraparounds that connected each segment, whether it be a Halloween party or candy-induced nightmares. These wraparounds were quickly dropped, however, when the show was given less time to broadcast each episode, and the writers decided to focus primarily on the stories, though most of the episodes still included some sort of cold open.
And one thing you'll notice, every year we're always like, we gotta have a big wraparounds and spend hours writing it and then cut it out right before air date. And you'll notice this season, we were like, let's forget it.
The wraparound is the part where Marge said, this is going to be scary and you should get your kids out of the room. And
right, and a warning that we're supposed to
That was
have.
one of the first times that we said, forget it about stuff, right? Quality, like, let's not bother.
Yeah, then we kept saying it throughout many episodes, yeah.
They called this the Simpsons Halloween Special, followed by whatever number it was in Roman numerals. And while everyone loved the creative original genius that was the title of said specials, it was eventually renamed to Treehouse of Horror by the 13th special. Although technically it was always officially called Treehouse of Horror, since the first Treehouse of Horror revolved around the kids telling scary stories in their treehouse, but for some reason in the episodes they referred to them as The Simpsons Halloween Special for the first 12 specials. And if that wasn't confusing enough, seeing as the first Treehouse of Horror episode aired during Season 2, every subsequent special is always off by 1 from the season that it's currently airing in. Yeah, it's kind of a mess in terms of organization, but it's also produced some of the most classic and quotable moments in television history. These specials also inspired some other Halloween anthology stories, like the almost equally great Terror Tales of the Park series from Regular Show, which some were nervous would just be a kid-friendly version of what The Simpsons were offering, until the first special premiered and had a man's skin completely torn off.
I told you I was ripped.
Now, I could go on and on about some of the nuances of Treehouse of Horror, the amazing nicknames that they come up with for the opening and closing credits, and a certain pair of recurring characters that at least cameo in every special. Oh, we'll talk about them eventually. Don't you worry about that. But given that we've now hit the 30th Treehouse of Horror special last year, I figured that a great way to celebrate this would be to go over every segment of every Treehouse of Horror, going over the synopsis, and giving my overall thoughts about each, finishing off by going over my favorites and least favorites towards the end of this video. Okay, I mean, I guess I could talk about something else, if that's what you really want. I could talk about the life-size Simpsons animatronics created by Gemmy Industries. People find animatronics scary now, right?
I said a hip hop, the hippie do the hip hop, you don't stop the rocket.
Okay then. Who was that guy? Anyway, there's over 90 segments to cover, and you better believe that I watched them all. One after the other. In a row. Twice. That being said, covering them all would be quite an undertaking for one person, so I was able to get some friends and fellow content creators to help out and cover a segment or two. Some of them will be uploading their segments to their personal channels, and some might post extended cuts of their versions in this video, so if you want to see some of the segments covered on their own, make sure to check out the creators' channels, and their links will be in the description below. A few other things. For this particular video, while there might be some mentions of wraparounds and cold opens by myself and the others, the video is focused primarily on these segments themselves, and they won't factor into my personal feelings of any segments I mentioned towards the end of the video. I'll also only be covering televised episodes, so media such as the Bart Simpson's Treehouse of Horror annual comics and The Simpsons Night of the Living Treehouse video game on Game Boy Color will not be covered in this particular video. And finally, the episodes Halloween of Horror and Thanksgiving of Horror will also not be covered in this video either, as the former, while being a Halloween episode, doesn't fall into the Treehouse of Horror family, and the latter, while following the same format of Treehouse of Horror, is technically a Thanksgiving episode. That being said, both these episodes are extremely good, and I'm looking forward to more Thanksgiving of Horror episodes, seeing as how it seems that they're going down that path in the future, with the second episode airing sometime later this year, I think, probably. Alright, I've wasted enough of your time, and we have a lot to cover. Oh boy, do we have a lot to cover. Let's jump straight into the video, starting where it all begins. At the beginning. Which, again, is Season 2. Actually, this still seems confusing. Let me go through this one more time.